Okay, so yet another fantasy title, or YAFT, is an open-world action-adventure game set in an absurd fantasy universe full of pop culture references. The king is dead, the kingdom's in turmoil. For some, it's a time of darkness, for others, a time of opportunity. Play as the rogue who uses his sword and his wit to deal with anyone who crosses his path. Sometimes he also uses spells. It's a fantasy game after all. That's the top paragraph in the About This Game section on Steam. And I bought this game thinking it's a little bit on the more expensive side for what it is. It's £17 on Steam, it's got a 10% launch discount. But I jumped into the game quite excited after playing Rustler, because Rustler, I would say, is a relatively similar game. And it's kind of got that like old school top-down GTA sort of vibe to it, except obviously you're in a fantasy world. You start the game on a raft, you're trying to escape from the King's Guard, because your father in the game has done something really, really bad. And when you make it to land, you're introduced to the combat and stuff, and everything seems alright. And shortly after, you're going to have a bigger enemy come in, and they are going to do you in, and you are going to wake up in this random bit of like farmland, and you have to escape where you are. So there's a little bit of like stealth mechanics added into the game. And then what you have to do is eventually make it like through all of the enemies unavoided. They give you a mask, and I thought the mask was really, really funny. I thought if the game carries on like this, then it's going to be a good time. And then once I got out of that, took my mask off, eventually found a sword, and I got into the game, it started to become more and more disappointing the more I played it. And I think the main reason for it is because you go to this area, you pick up a quest, and with the quest they say, go here, kill the trolls. And then you have to travel really far to get to another quest, and then they say, go and become this, like, basically disguise yourself as a beaver, jump into a field, and like after you've destroyed the farm, go and scare people. And it's like, okay, like, where is this going? Like, what could you possibly get from this out of enjoyment? Because, like, they say there's a load of pop culture references. The game, I believe, like, from games that I've played similar to this, it's supposed to be designed to have a lot of, like, humor in there and things like that. And every single thing, at least in my opinion, every single thing they tried doing in terms of comedy just completely fell flat. Like, the moment anything, like, besides that first mask, like, for me personally, anything they tried throwing into the game flatlined, like, instantly. You think, okay, like, something's coming up that's going to be funny? No, dead. Absolutely boring. And the game has no actual voices. It's all talking gibberish. And when you get further in, you meet different characters. They have different styles to their voices. It just becomes annoying. And you are eventually introduced to spells. You get fireballs, you get lightning, and it seems cool at first, but the way they've set it up on the keybinds is you've got Z, X, C, and V for your spells. You can change a keybind, so there's not a problem there. But I thought, okay, this is going to be a little bit awkward. Let me try my controller, because the game does support controllers. And it's even worse. When you are using a controller, you have to hold in your thumbstick to be able to sprint. It's not a click. And you can't change it so that it's toggle instead of hold or anything like that. So I just abandoned the controller, back to mouse and keyboard, changed a couple of the key bindings, put some of the spells onto my side mouse buttons, and it felt a lot better like that. But the controls are just awkward in general. The camera angle can sometimes be a little bit weird. And not only that, in the settings you have like select spell, B and Z, X, C and V, and then you're supposed to have a keybind that lets you cast the spell. So for an example, like on controller, you press left on your D-pad, you've selected the left slot for your spells, and then it's like left trigger or something like that to actually cast the spell. So using mouse and keyboard, it should be that you press Z, you equip or make the lightning active, and then you can press a button that you've assigned to cast the spell, because you do have the settings, or you have the key binding to select the spells, and then you have a separate one to cast the spell. But it doesn't matter what you assign that to on mouse or keyboard, it doesn't work. There was absolutely no way I found to set an active spell and then use something that I assigned to cast that spell over and over again. So I ended up having to have the lightning on my back mouse button and like on the left hand side of the mouse, and then I had the fireball on the front mouse button on the left-hand side. So then I'm left with 2 spell slots that I'm going to have to use something on the keyboard for, because you can't just set an active spell and then use one designated button in order to use that spell. And then, like, say you've got your spell set on 1, 2, 3, 4, I can't have my spell casting set to the back mouse button on the left-hand side, like mouse button 4 or whatever it is. I can't just go, all right, I want to use the lightning, press 1, and then I've got to use my mouse button, and then, oh, I want to switch to the fireball, press 3, and then start using my mouse button, because the casting spell does not work when you assign it to mouse or keyboard. So there's just awkward controls in the game, whether it's mouse and keyboard or whether you're playing with controller, which was a little bit off-putting. It was much, much better to play with mouse and keyboard because you can just hold down shift. But when it comes to sprinting using a controller, you have to hold it in. That got really frustrating. And then, as I said, like the voices and stuff, there was one thing I really, really liked is when you are out on like a path, you've got your standard camera angle, and then as you went into like a forest area, it shows you like a magnifying glass. It kind of like chops down the trees, essentially. Like, it basically moves the trees out of the way so you can see what's behind them so that you're not getting stuck as much. Because when you get stuck in this game, it is infuriating. Trying, like, if you're mounted on a horse, it's so annoying trying to get these stupid horses to move around. And when it comes to the the open world, the map essentially, like, I've explored most of it already. I've played just over an hour of this game, and I feel as though I've explored a good 70 or 80% of the entire world map, because these quests are literally just chucking you to and from A to B, kill trolls, scare people in a field. There's so much they could have done better with this game, in my opinion. There is some good to it. Like, there is a story, there are different characters, you get to mount a horse and ride around. The horses are rapid in this game. But then I don't think you can actually own your own horse, or at least in the first hour you can't. You have to go around stealing horses. So if you're miles away from anyone that's riding a horse, or if there's a horse stationed somewhere, you're going to have to do quite a lot of running around. You can't just press a button and like summon your horse, call your horse to you, or anything like that. You pretty much just have to steal them. And when you have a quest that's really far away, again, running around does get annoying. And then after about an hour or so of main quests, you do get side quests and stuff that open up, and they do have these like duck temples where you take out a couple of enemies and you learn the language of ducks. I have no idea what that entails when you get further into it. Like, basically I did one and it reveals what it says, and it basically just talks a load of gibberish. And I get it, the game is designed for that, but when you're like creating a game like this, my opinion, because I wouldn't try making a game or anything like that, I have absolutely no knowledge of how to make games or anything at all. But in my opinion, from a gamer's point of view, when you're making a game like this, I feel as though the comedy really needs to hit. There needs to be something for gamers to get themselves attached to, and there is absolutely nothing in this game. And not only that, on Steam, the game has 36 different achievements, and every single one of those is for completing a quest. There is absolutely nothing else. And you're going around, you're doing these quests, you're earning gold, and there's pretty much nothing to spend the gold on. You can buy yourself a couple of spells and stuff. You do find different weapons, like I ended up with a scythe, I had an axe, as well as my sword and my magic. But I feel as though the little over an hour I spent on the game has shown me enough of the game to know that I'm not going to enjoy my time pushing forward. And that's why I have dropped the game after such a short time, because my aim with reviews is to try and complete the game, or if not, get as close to completion as I possibly can. And I'm not talking about 100%, I mean like complete the story with a sprinkle of side quests at least. But this game it did my absolute head in. All of the traversal around the map, like going from point A to point B, picking up a quest, killing a troll, picking up a quest, doing this, is literally back and forth from the very get-go of the game. So there are a couple of good features, like there was no performance issues whatsoever. The game looks good. I like the fact that you've got a mount to move around. I enjoyed the magnifying glass. Like, there are a few things here that players will enjoy, but I feel as though if you're going to thoroughly enjoy this game, you've really got to dig deep and be a massive fan of this style of game. And then there are a few things there as well that are just frustrating when they didn't need to be. Like, there's just no depth to the initial quests of the game whatsoever. The stealth mechanic is literally used once in the first hour, and I don't think this game's going to go on to last like 20-30 hours. I think I managed to do like 4 or 5 of I'm going to guess is 36 main quests. I managed to do 4 or 5 in about an hour. But on top of that, you've got an awkward control scheme, you've got awkward camera angles at times. The enemies are already showing that there's not a lot of variety with them at all. And the voices do eventually over time become more and more frustrating. Some of the voices in the game are a lot more frustrating than others. And then when they're saying there's a lot of pop culture references and things like that, I feel as though the comedy needs to be there. And the only time I laughed in my hour of gameplay was when I was given the stupid mask at the beginning of the game, because I found that to be quite funny. But then you get a little bit further in and they go, okay, we're going to give you a beaver costume. You're going to go around destroying a farm and then scaring people. It's like, okay, this one really didn't hit. And with all of that said, my final score for yet another fantasy title is going to be a 5 out of 10. It's not by any means an awful game. It's absolutely nowhere near an amazing game. It's just dead in the middle. There's some good, there's some bad. There's comedy that doesn't hit. There's some good spells and like use of swords and things like that. The performance is really good. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing standing out, and there's nothing like dreadfully awful. It's just, if you want to make a good game out of this, you really have to dig deep. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for YAFT, or yet another fantasy title. And that is going to do it for this review. Let me know your thoughts and your rating for this game in the comments. I will see you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.